Okay, so um, so two things from this article. One is the burden of medical debt as a major contributor to personal bankruptcy in this country, and um, the the disparity of bankruptcy proceedings and disparity of debt in legal recourse, meaning in this case bankruptcy, to relieve oneself from debt. Unfortunately, like many other things, this is influenced by historical oppression and that is still impacting the topic of debt and bankruptcy and legal recourse for debt in this country today. So this article is from 2021, Wall Street Journal, titled "Black People More Likely to File for Personal Bankruptcy, Choose Repayment Option." All right, so they start with the author starts with a describing an individual, Miss Malloy from Tulsa, Oklahoma. One of the things that struck me as I started to read this article was we talk a lot about, and rightly so, about people getting sick or injured, managing chronic conditions, uh, and accruing medical debt for that. In the case of Miss Malloy, um, her debt is actually from helping her chronically, using the words in the article, her chronically ill parents. So she's taking care of them, which takes time, and time she might otherwise be able to work more, um, or to generate income. She and she's paying them down their debt. So one of the things I thought about, you see over here, is that the federal government does, and it varies a little bit from year to year, and you wouldn't necessarily know this unless you do your taxes yourself through TurboTax or like I do. But there is, or you have medical debt, and hopefully you've gotten some assistance or figured it out on your own through a software like TurboTax. That at a certain threshold, which varies from year to year, a financial threshold, you can begin to deduct payments made for medical debt. And those can be copays, or that can be, it can be whether you have insurance or not have insurance, as far as like my understanding of the tax law. Um, so anyway, it raises the question, well, what if a person is paying for a dependent's uh, medical debt? Is that tax deductible? Certainly, the law, again, as I understand it, just from filing my own taxes, is that if if you have a dependent child is under 18 or 18 or under, I'm sorry, under 18, that they would, that you're paying, medical bills. If it hits a certain threshold, they're dependent as your child. You can deduct that to at least some extent on your taxes. Um, but what about other dependents? And it's a question, I don't know. So just something for you to consider. Also begs the larger question of, if we're caring for aged parents, um, are we able to from a tax perspective, file as taking care of dependents? So beyond the scope of our discussion here, but I just thought I'd call that out. So the author talks about some data that suggests that um, uh, Black people in the U.S. More likely file for bankruptcy if they can afford the cost of filing. Okay, and we'll talk more about that in a second. Um, so the other part of this, and the one of the things I liked about this article is it provides a high level definition of the difference between Chapter 13 and Chapter 7. Um, and so for the purpose of the article, and actually, if I were to level any amount of critique um, to the author, I would have defined Chapter 7, Chapter 13 earlier in the article before referring to it. But it's okay. It's still a good article for sure. But anyway, so just quickly down here, so Chapter 13 allows you to create a payment plan for your debtors and retain possession of assets, homes and cars and the like. Chapter 7 refers to what they call liquidation, which is essentially that you're trading off any assets you have of any value to pay your creditors. I'm sorry, I said debtors before, I meant creditors. Okay, people you owe debt to. And so the so chapter 7, why some might choose chapter 7 is that it does give you somewhat of a clean slate. I would say somewhat of a clean slate in terms of debt absolution, but it requires that you surrender a lot, if not all of your any asset you have, like cars and homes. And then you don't have a payment plan. So those are at the highest level, the difference, some fundamental differences between chapter 13 and chapter 7 when we talk about bankruptcy. So as defined by the author in the article here. Now, bankruptcy itself requires a cost. And that cost, like medical debt, legal costs can be highly variable and vulnerable to bias and racially driven and other discriminatory discrepancies in terms of variability of pricing. So one of the things that I kind of noted to myself is, some people, and I've seen this in doing social work over the years, that some people can't even get to bankruptcy to begin to escape the debt that they have because they can't afford the process. And that can mean the difference, as I noted here, that can mean the difference between being able to retain a home and have it lost to you, having the bank, the mortgage company take that home back, and if people, don't move out, eventually they can be escorted out by law enforcement, forcibly removed from their home. So, so the affordability of bankruptcy processes is another issue. Okay. So the article, and I didn't know this, and I thought this was an interesting data point here, that the federal court system, which is how the vehicle through which bankruptcy occurs, because it is a legal process, does not collect demographic information, and so it leaves, so it makes it harder to get a good to get a 100% accurate read on what's happening in bankruptcy and breaking that and looking at that data by race, gender, age, and other demographic factors. The author asserts that that the history of bankruptcy, as in many things, which is why we talk about bias and structural oppression and historical oppression, why that's important in social in our program and in social work in general, is that it has a historical biases and injustice in its in and of itself, meaning the bankruptcy, the legal proceedings of bankruptcy, and of course biases in the legal system are and biases in bankruptcy proceedings are related to other sort of core aspects of structural oppression and historical inequity and disenfranchisement, inequity in housing, employment, banking, healthcare, criminal justice, all other other aspects of society contribute to a high percentage of, in this case, Black people, but Um, it infers, and doesn't go into in this article, but you could likely infer that we're talking about people along all lines of minority by racial, ethnic, gender, residency status, so the standard fault lines of oppression, if you will. Uh, People who have filed for Black people who are filed for Chapter 13 bankruptcy are less likely to obtain a discharge of their debt. So coming back here, um, Chapter 13, which is a more costly proceeding according to the author, and again coming back down here, um, Chapter 13 is distinct from Chapter 7 because it does provide the individual to retain possession of their assets like a home. Um, but I'm sorry, where were we here? Sorry, I lost my place. Let me go back up here. Okay. So, so people have filed for Chapter 13 bankruptcy, in other words, setting up payments to their debtors through a legal process in exchange for retaining their assets like a home, are less likely to ultimately obtain a discharge of their debt, according to data cited by the author of the article. Um, so let's see. I think I had, nope, never mind. Oh, so here, sorry, this is what I was looking for. So here the author breaks down some of the average costs of Chapter 13 versus the average cost of Chapter 7. So you can read that there. $3,000 to $4,000 in total for Chapter 13. Chapter 7, where you end up surrendering your assets as part of that process, is about $1,200. So you can infer what could happen here is that the cost of 13 versus 7 itself may prompt one to have, feel or actually have no alternative but to go with Chapter 7 and surrender their assets. Again, most importantly, their home if they're a homeowner. Okay. Chapter 13, as you can read there, costs more, could take 3 to 5 years to resolve. Chapter 7 filing is cheaper, and resolution of debt can be completed in about 6 months, as assets are liquefied and debt is absolved. The other thing that I thought was worth noting in the article here is Miss Malloy's own experience of working with attorneys herself, feeling like she's talked down to, and in fact she, I think what she was alluding to here was that she attempted a couple times to pursue bankruptcy and ultimately didn't do it because she had, she, as she says here, felt she was treated poorly and decided to pull back from that based on these experiences with bad experiences with the legal system and with the individual attorneys. Again, long-standing structural oppression that weighs down onto people today, people of color today, in terms of not having assets built over time, over generations, leaves them more vulnerable to pay higher rates. They're more likely to end up in debt. They're going to have to pay higher rates to absolve their debt because they don't have, there's sort of a no money down option, as the author alludes to. So the less the less income and assets you have, the worse that bankruptcy proceeding is going to go for, the more it's going to cost, and the less you're going to get out of it in terms of retaining assets and actually getting to a place of absolution of your current debt. So this was interesting because it's just consistent. I've the research for decades on bias associated with interpretation, racial and ethnic interpretation of names, uh, on anything from job applications to school applicate, to higher ed application, education applications, anything. Um, Bias it seeps in, sometimes purely based on the interpretation of the names on there. So you see that noted here. That's sadly consistent with the bankruptcy process as well. And so there's so let's pause there for a second. I wanted to coming back to hear this no money down option, why people who are have been on the sharpest end of historical and structural oppression, historical disenfranchisement, uh, leaving themselves over the generations with less assets, less wealth than others who have not experienced those such biases and discrimination and policies.